Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. Just got the tweet out there in time to tell people to get here live on YouTube. It is a monster Wednesday show, Sam.
Big show indeed.
My favorite show of the week. We're going to touch on Monday Night Football. We have an offensive coordinator fired. We're going to do the first in our autopsy series for the New York Giants and identify the cause of death of the Giants season, if you're calling it done. We've got Dean Blandino back to answer all the questions about officiating and poor officiating
Indeed.
In the NFL.
Grill the man.
We get the Shouty Show segment, future award-winning Shouty Show segment, future award-winning. We're going to win stuff
for
that. So we got a big show here today.
And we have ridiculous facial hair.
Well, you do at least.
I mean, you're just.
What do you mean? You look good. So you got somewhere.
We raised money. The Movember, we hit $100, remember. So each of us are raising money for Movember, Men's Health, et cetera, good cause, all that kind of stuff. The link to which should be in the description of this show. For both of us now, right? You actually set yours up.
I have a link where you can send money for Men's Health.
Correct. Now, you are doing the traditional Movember way, which is to clean shave and then grow the mustache from scratch. I already had substantial facial hair, so I figured, you know what, I'm going to do it in reverse. We'll call it like a reverse sear. You know, when you're making steak, it's a reverse Movember. So I'm going to go down to the mustache from a full beard in various iterations. So for every $100 we raise, of which we have hit the first one, I will shave down the beard to a subsequent smaller mustache. So this is version number 1.
So literally every show, you're probably going to have a different version of facial hair.
I don't control when, the timeline. It's up to people. If people put money in to the donation, then the mustache will get ever smaller and more ridiculous.
So Movember links are in the description. I will continue with my mustache throughout the month, as you said. And as you can see, the shadow, my old strategy of once a week shaving, going to have to lose that. I'm going to have to take the straight razor to the face again to accentuate the stash.
Exactly. The shorter the mustache, the earlier it is in its growth process, the more clean shaven everything else needs to be.
Puts a lot more pressure on me. So we'll be doing that. We'll be shaving a little bit more often here. So we appreciate everybody. And for those who are new, we used to do this fairly often. Some of the charity drives and everything. We've raised $15,000, $20,000?
Yeah, it's more, like 20, up to somewhere in the region of 25, I think, total over the time we've been doing the show, which is a great thing to be able to do, to raise money for good causes. So here's our first attempt at doing that on the new show.
First Check the Mic
charity drive, yeah.
Appreciate everybody joining that. And the other information that we have to pass along, a very special show tomorrow night. So we have our normal Thursday preview show and then our live reaction show after Eagles Commanders. Tell everybody what we're doing here.
We're doing a live kind of collaboration with our guy Brandon Perna of That's Good Sports. If you see him on Twitter or his monstrous YouTube channel, we're going to be going live kind of collectively, all in the same chat, streamed across both channels on multiple YouTube channels. So that should be a lot of fun. It's only just occurred to me that I'll be sporting this ridiculous facial hair while we're doing that. Yeah.
Maybe I'll never want to do it again. Thanks to you.
Oh, well.
Tune in to see if my camera works. It'll be great. It's all part of the fun. We'll do that tomorrow night. Instant reaction. It'll be YouTube exclusive, so make sure you're on YouTube for that. Eagles Commanders right after the game. First thing we want to touch on today is Monday Night Football. It did happen. It was probably the least eventful Monday Night Football game of the year, based off reaction from the fans and everything. Miami Dolphins, they get the win over the Rams, 23-15. Dolphins get their first win since Week 5, first win since Tua has returned. They move to 3-6, and the Rams fall to 4-5. Again, we always do our instant reaction on this. We talked about it a little bit, but what were your thoughts on Dolphins-Rams?
It was a weird game, right? For some reason, it just didn't seem to capture anybody's imagination, even though
I enjoyed it. I enjoy NFL football. There was some fun stuff going on there, but it just didn't. We didn't have the controversy or crazy things to talk about coming out of it.
It was strange. It just didn't seem to capture everybody's imagination. The classic sort of Thursday night slop games have for some reason been more captivating or more talked about than this particular game. Which, as I said, there was nothing wrong with it. It just for some reason felt like a generic by the numbers football game where Miami were slightly better and therefore won the game.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of big plays, basically.
Right.
as we're talking this too, got to shout out PrizePicks, by the way. Whole show is brought to you by PrizePicks, and I'll have my lineup later today. I'm losing track of how often I've won here, Sam. I think it's 5 out of 8 weeks. Sorry. So we're going to keep that going. I'll have my lineup unveiled a little bit later. So coming off another win last week, PrizePicks, shout out to them. You guys can join in the action. Promo code Check the Mic. After you download the app, you get $50 instantly when you play $5. So yeah, I think from a Dolphins perspective, I mean, both teams trying to keep their seasons alive. I think from a Rams perspective, it's a missed opportunity. They fall to 4-5. They had won 3 straight. They seemingly looked like a different team with Puka Nacua, with Cooper Kupp. I think it's a missed opportunity for them at home to get to 5-4, where you have to hang with the Cardinals. It's not over for the Rams because it's so tight in the NFC West.
Right.
Whereas for the Dolphins, they really can't lose at this point just to compete in the AFC. So 3-6, they're still alive, and they're a good team. They were a good team last year. They're a team that's capable of going on a run. Like, of all the 3-6 teams or 3-win teams around the NFL, Dolphins probably have the best chance to, make some noise as as we head to the playoffs.
They do. I mean, I think both defenses in this game were quite impressive, and created some serious pressure and some serious problems for the opposing offense. I think Miami dealt with it better and maybe just better equipped to deal with it than the Rams were. I think both defenses were in the ascendancy, were making plays. It's just that the Miami offense with Tua in there generally has the fastest average time to throw in the NFL anyway. They're kind of used to and built to deal with that kind of problematic offensive line, and they were able to do that. The Rams offense didn't quite deal with it as well, even though it's been a trend for them this season. Like, they have had games where Matthew Stafford has been under incredible duress, and they've done a really good job. They just didn't do it necessarily in this game.
I got no more use for this game.
Other than to shout out the rookie defensive lineman, I think, on both sides. Chop Robinson showed up, had a really legitimate sack this time, as opposed to previously where it was more of a, hey, we're just not going to block him. And Jared Verse, again, remains just a beast. I mean, that guy, we said a few weeks ago at the midway point in the season, he's the runaway defensive rookie of the year. If anything, he's only gapping the rest of the field in the last couple of weeks. That dude just looks fantastic.
Verse has been so good. Yeah, he had the strip sack and recovery, some great plays in this game. Yeah, absolutely. Runaway defensive rookie of the year so far. Mm-hmm. Let's talk Shane Waldron in the Bears.
Let's.
Or was I supposed to not do that? I'm just way off today, completely. Let's talk about PFF first. Oh. Fantasy leagues, debates at the bar, prop bets, whatever your game is, you need the right info to dominate. That's why you need PFF Plus. With PFF Plus, you get access to tools built from the same data that NFL teams trust, like premium fantasy projections and exclusive betting angles. With PFF Plus, you'll be making smarter calls all season long. So if you're looking to win big, don't just rely on gut feelings. Get the same data and analysis that powers winning decisions right at your fingertips. Go to PFF.com and check out PFF Plus. PFF Plus, powering winning decisions. As we know, we've been there. We were there over a decade at PFF, helping build that data. So fully endorse the PFF data. Still use it right here on Check the Mic, and you should as well. And we got to hang out with our friend Trevor the other night.
Yeah.
Good to see him.
Dinner.
Right? It was, it was cordial. It was good. We didn't fight.
Cordial.
It was great. We all get along. It was fun.
Détente.
Let's talk Shane Waldron, fired by the Bears, offensive coordinator. This is your fault. You called for his job on Sunday's show.
This is my fault.
Oh, yeah.
Not the inept Bears offense.
No. You said,
got it.
Head's going to roll.
I did predict it. I'm not sure that's the same as speaking it into existence.
So Waldron last 10 weeks as the Bears offensive coordinator. He had come over from Seattle. He was the hire to be the guy for Matt Eberflus to get Caleb Williams going as a rookie, and it's been ugly.
Yeah, and as people pointed out, one of the other options for like an offensive coordinator was Cliff Kingsbury, who had worked with Caleb Williams in college and is currently cooking with Jayden Daniels in Washington. Looking, that offense looks fantastic now. It's the A/B analysis you never get, right? Like, what would happen if you dropped C.J. Stroud in the Carolina Panthers situation last year? Probably doesn't look great. Also, what would happen if Bryce Young went to Houston with Bobby Slowick? And, you never get the other version of the counterfactual of what could have happened. So, but it is looking pretty bad that Shane Waldron was your choice, and Cliff Kingsbury over there is looking amazing with the guy, with a different guy, but you could have paired him with the guy that he made look the number 1 overall pick in college.
Our friend Zach also interviewed for that job. Yeah. Zach Robinson, now with Atlanta. So the thing about the offensive coordinator, I think a lot of times we speak about this in just he calls the football plays, right? This guy's not good at calling the plays, or this guy is good at calling the plays. But the coordinator has so much on his plate, far more than just calling the plays. He's got a game plan. He has to do all these things. But the issue with the Bears this year is everything.
Yeah.
But seemingly the details, the route concepts. So you're putting in the concepts, the spacing. You're also teaching it. Right, and that is the most underrated part of coaching is you're teaching guys to execute these plays. Right, you always say you're only as good as what your players know, not what's in your head. Right, so you could have the best drawn on a napkin play, but if players can't execute it, it doesn't work. I'm seeing all of those issues with the Bears: attention to detail, protection issues, communication issues, receiver and quarterback not on the same page. And then we mentioned Caleb Williams deserves some blame too, right? There is this world where the quarterback is this force multiplier where we know historically the best in the world are going to elevate everybody around them and probably make coordinators look good, right? We have this history of Brady and Manning and whoever. They're great, and then the people that are around them go somewhere else, and they're not great anymore. So maybe the quarterback's the biggest driver. And so on one hand, you might say, well, maybe Caleb Williams isn't the force multiplier. He's also 10 weeks into his career.
Right.
And on the other hand, you say the system's been bad, the O-line hasn't been great, the details haven't been great around him, so a change just had to be made.
It did. I mean, I think that's the bottom line is that the reason I predicted it is because that's the kind of game they're coming out of, and it wasn't like that was a one-off. That was the extension of a trend. It's the type of game that gets somebody fired. And obviously, if Eberflus has any sway left in that building, he's not going to fire himself, right? So somebody's got to get canned or at least lose responsibilities. A change has got to be made of significance, and this was the most logical one to make. And to be honest, whether or not it's Waldron's fault directly, there's at least enough plausibility in the idea that he's ultimately responsible for that side of the ball that it makes sense. I mean, nothing is working with that offense right now, and it's a collective. But you can't, there's only so many things you can fix, major moves you can make. You're probably not benching Caleb Williams, right? I don't think we're at that point, though the report that apparently a section of the locker room is like campaigning for Tyson Bagent to get starts. That's not good. So you're probably not making that move. That's a fairly drastic H-bomb to take out. A change in the offensive line, like, a starter here or there, that's probably not moving the needle a huge amount. The obvious thing is let's change the play caller and let's try and shift the offense a bit. I saw somebody saying, well, obviously the one thing you really want to do to a rookie quarterback is make him learn a second offense within the space of a year. I mean, that's not what's happening. Like, you're not dumping one offense, bringing in like the complete antithesis, a completely different offensive language. You're just saying, okay, new voice, new play caller. Here's the framework of what we're working with. Fix it.
Yeah. Thomas Brown's going to take over. It's going to be the same terminology. It's the same offense, but this part is, I mentioned offensive coordinators not just calling plays. This part will just be calling plays. He'll be sequencing them differently. Chances are probably trying to play to his strengths, play to the receiver's strengths, and get more out of the Bears passing offense in particular, but the Bears offense within the framework that was Shane Waldron's, right? That's what happens midseason when you have a change in play caller. We saw it last year with the Bills. Joe Brady took over the offense. Again, he didn't just change everything. He just sequenced things differently, emphasized different things, and they got good results as a team down the stretch. So we'll see if the Bears can do the same. Anything else on Waldron here before we get to future award-winning Shouty Show segment?
No, let's hear some Shouty Shows.
All right, we got Shouty Shows, and then we got Dean Blandino coming up. So let's get to it. Us against the Shouty Shows for Week 10 here.
Well, the Rams are still not healthy on the interior of their O-line. They're playing a rookie center. They don't want to. They're playing a pretty marginal left guard. So it's still not a great O-line. Is Christian Wilkins playing the D tackle for the Dolphins?
They're not going to do inactives until a little later today.
So, I mean, I think the Rams could have a little problem running the ball tonight through their interior. But
yeah,
Christian Wilkins plays for the Raiders.
And, in fact, doesn't play for the Raiders at the moment because he's on IR for the Raiders.
I'm just saying, of all the the errors in that, the fact that he's not a Dolphin is the biggest issue, not the fact that he's on IR.
Correct, but they're both pretty significant barriers to him playing on Monday night.
I have empathy.
Correct.
For that.
Yes, I want to go to bat.
Right.
Look, as somebody that started off our preview show talking about the running back matchup between, James Conner and whoever the hell else the Steelers are playing, even though James Conner plays for Arizona, sometimes your brain is just going to short circuit and draw a connection that isn't there anymore. This I think is different. Remember the way there was a stretch of time a while ago where they were really pushing Stephen A. Smith talking about football, and it was pretty evident that he had no earthly idea what the hell he was talking about, and he kept bringing up players that didn't play for that team or players that hadn't been there in years, and this was like a weekly thing, right, where Stephen A. Smith was just demonstrating the lack of knowledge he had for the subject matter. This, I think, is different, where this is just a brain glitch. Right? Colin Cowherd is on the air talking for 1 million hours a day, every single day. Sometimes your brain is just going to short circuit and he doesn't play there anymore.
So on one hand, if you and I did it, it's a brain glitch. The problem, I think, with Cowherd here is that he needs to – he's got to roll in with really strong is LeBron the GOAT takes every day, right?
But Cowherd knows that Christian Wilkins doesn't play for the Dolphins.
I don't really know if he does.
I think he does.
He was the biggest free agent signing in the NFL last year, but our job is the NFL. We know that.
Cowherd knows
we're
that.
10 weeks into the season. I don't know if he's keeping up with NFL free agency that much. All he talks about is quarterbacks. He probably watches the NFL on Sunday. He's not going back and grinding film for the next 3 days. He's got to watch the NBA games on Monday, and he's got to have takes on college football, and he's got to do all these other things. And he just forgot that Wilkins is on the Raiders. And they were like, hey, talk about Dolphins-Rams. How many Dolphins-Rams games has Colin Cowherd watched closely this year? I know he's out in L.A. Maybe he watches Rams games closer. I don't know. I can't imagine he's watched the Dolphins for more than a half this year. And it was the Monday Night Football game when they played it, didn't have Tua, and it was ugly. I'm just telling you, he's probably not locked into all 32 NFL teams.
I don't think he needs to be locked in. I think Cowherd knows that Christian Wilkins doesn't play for the Dolphins anymore. This is not the same as Stephen A. Smith demonstrating a consistent lack of knowledge about the NFL. I think he just had a brain glitch, and the other guy, Jason, he was just led, like you're leading the witness, right? At the point where you sort of set out the premise, that requires him consciously correcting him live on the air, be like, no, he doesn't play there anymore, right? Which, number one, you might not want to do to the guy who, bite the hand that feeds you. And number two, your brain is set along a pathway at that point.
We would do that. We're more informal, and we would correct each other, and then we just say, I'm an idiot. I'm sorry, I messed up.
Yeah, we're both reliant on each other for an income, but not in the same way, right? It's not like, I rely on you as my benefactor, It's like, no, we're equals here.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the same thing.
Don't embarrass Colin.
Exactly. Jason doesn't want to be like, no, idiot. He doesn't even play there anymore, you dumbass. Like, you can't rip the guy that's providing you with the platform, right? So I don't think I don't think Cowherd, I think his brain glitched, and I think the other guy, it's not necessarily reasonable to expect him to correct Cowherd live on air. So I want to absolve both of them for that. I don't think that's
empathy.
I don't think that's a massive problem.
We attacked this one with empathy. Let's get to the next one.
This Colts team fucking sucks. I'm disgusted. Wow. I'm disgusted.
Flacco.
Everybody wants to put AR in. Hey, listen.
Oh, no.
AR had no chance with this building that is happening. That is what I've realized over the last 12 hours. He's got nobody telling him how he's supposed to operate in that building.
Exactly.
Kenny Moore, our captain, one of my favorite guys on the football team.
Yeah.
After the game comes out and he goes, our team doesn't work. So AR had no idea how he's supposed to be a professional because there's no damn professionals in that building.
That's strong.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily unreasonable either. McAfee's probably quite plugged into that building based off being, a former player there. And, we flagged it coming out of the weekend, right? The thing, Kenny Moore's kind of comments, I think was pretty significant. You start putting all that together. Hey, Anthony Richardson, was it naivety to be like, tap himself out of the game, right? Surely somebody, and then to say it publicly afterwards, I was just tired, not going to lie, right? All those NFL players were like, lie, don't say that out loud in front of a microphone, right? Clearly there was a breakdown there somewhere. Like, that should have been information that was in Richardson's brain and wasn't. You start putting all that together and you do end up with this pattern of where is Where's the experienced professional head within that building getting everybody on the same page?
One of the toughest things in sports is the chicken or the egg aspect of team chemistry. Do you feel good about your teammates when you're winning? Is it because of the winning, or do you win because of it, right? And I think that's – I don't know if Indy's up against that. Like you're on this losing streak, and then you've got Kenny Moore. Oh, nobody's working hard. Everybody's bad. It's all bad. We knew this was coming, right? Or whoever else, some other player said that. Like, oh yeah, if you saw the week of practice, it's all bad, right? Of course we lost. Gary Wilson.
No, he was the other way around. He was like, the week of practice was great. We just in the games we don't want it.
Just suck at the games. But a lot of times it's everybody hates each other. But if they win, it's like, oh, right, we really bonded together, came together down the stretch, So that part's difficult to unpack.
I also think it shows a potential concern with, drafting these young, inexperienced quarterbacks, because quarterback, it's supposed to be the leader, right? Peyton Manning, the sheriff, right? The guy is supposed to be the general, the one that everybody follows. But if you're drafting a wildly young, inexperienced, quote, immature, just sort of not, and I mean immaturity as in like just non-world experience, you know what I mean? Like apparently doesn't know that you can't say in front of a microphone, I was just tired on this play, so I want it out, right? If you're drafting somebody like that, there's a real disconnect there between he's supposed to lead a locker room full of experienced men, professionals, versus, he's not really up to that task yet. Like I
think it's a fair point.
That's a potential issue with those.
That's why the solution is Topgolf.
Topgolf.
You take them to Topgolf, you find out who the leader is ahead of time, so you don't deal with this.
And
you think the Topgolf leader is going to opt out a little tired on 3rd and 20? Absolutely not.
Well, not just that, but so there's a certain degree of life experience necessary to organize the Topgolf, right? Just simply the mechanism of it, right?
Yeah, just getting people lined up and getting moving people into whatever they're called.
Has he
booths, banner, bays? Which bay you in? Right. Oh, we'll split it up.
Has he arranged, the credit cards and who's going to pay and how the whole thing's divided? Like somebody's going to do that.
Jaden crushed it. I can only assume. All right, what's next?
I am going to start calling him Herschel Parsons. Because I think it tells the story better than Micah Walker. I'm not saying that they should trade Micah Parsons because he isn't a great player. I'm saying they should trade Micah Parsons because they have painted themselves into a terrible position, no matter how you slice it. An incredibly expensive quarterback, an incredibly expensive wide receiver, an incredibly expensive defensive player, and a roster in dramatic need of being lifted in a lot of different places.
Do you think that Greenberg gets upset when the other people chime in and like ruin his speech cadence?
The same way Mike T elicits laughter in the middle of his
right. Well, that's
trade.
That's
maybe they just all laugh at each other a lot.
It does feel like it's difficult to get your point across.
He's like, no, I was practicing this in front of the mirror. Don't interrupt.
But like when Winston Churchill is giving his speech, right? Nobody, the reporters with the old 40s hat and the ticket and the brim, the credential and the brim and the pad and paper, they're not like chipping in with comments during it, right?
No.
They're respectful. They're like, here's going to be a great speech. We're going to take every word of this down. We're going to print it in the paper tomorrow. It's going to go out live. It's going to become one of the greatest speeches of all time, right? Nobody's heckling John F. Kennedy, when he's like, ask not what your country can do for you. They let him get it out because there's a rhythm to that. Greenberg's sitting there. He's trying to give his JFK speech, and people are chipping in from the bleachers. I think that annoys him.
I think you're right. It's also got to be tough to give 25 Churchills a day. How do you crank out that many speeches?
It's a daily Churchill is what he's doing, yeah.
More than a daily, I imagine. We only get one a week here. I'm sure. I don't watch. I'm sure he has others. The concept, the Cowboys, of course, are fascinating because I don't, like if you said, hey, are the Cowboys going to take a step back this year? I'd say, yeah, that's a fair assessment, right? Offensive line turnover. I don't trust Tyler Guyton. He's your left tackle now. Run game looks awful. Didn't get better at receiver. But they're not like that far away. I don't think the Cowboys are that far away that it's blow it up.
They won 12 wins.
They had 12 wins last
12
year.
wins 3 straight seasons last year, right? They were supposed to be good this year. Yeah, I'm
also of the mind, like if you were to get like 2 firsts and a second for Micah Parsons, like I'm thinking about it, but
But
I don't know.
we always talk about, okay, you've got for the spine of a team, for the real skeleton, the foundation stones of a team, you need quarterback, check. Okay, you can debate, is he good enough for the money he's on? But you have a top-tier quarterback, right? Top-tier receiver, CeeDee Lamb is now locked up. Pass rusher would be next. That's Micah Parsons, who we're talking about getting to be paid. And then the next two would be cornerback, Diggs is there, and top-tier offensive tackle. Now, okay, that one's a question mark because you just drafted Tyler Guyton in the first round. He's struggling as a, developmental project-y type of tackle. But 3 of the 5 positions that you would identify as locking down necessary cornerstone pieces are already there and locked up. And the next 2 are not definite failures. I mean, they're workable. So you look at this, you say, is this the main bones of this are good? It's just obviously things are spiraled out of control this year.
They've drafted well. They need to dabble in free agency the right way and not the wrong way, way they've been doing it. And so I think they're close. I'd probably keep Micah Parsons. All right, what's next here?
I just can't get a break. Just when I thought we might take off, Cooper Rush in for Dak Prescott. Did not happen. Cooper Rush pretty much stunk in the first half. He did throw one pretty good ball that would have put Dallas maybe ahead at halftime. CD running across the back of the end zone, loses it in the sunlight and runs right past it. Jerry, just close the blinds. How about it?
Well, I'm with him there.
The most reasonable thing Skip's brought to the table in 15 years.
I mean, I think we started off at a bad spot, right? I just can't catch a break. Skip Bayless, he of multi-million-dollar salaries for the last gazillion years, was made face of a network, etc. Just can't catch a break,
Yeah. Poor Skip, the team that he likes the most, the 3-win team and their backup quarterback just couldn't beat the Eagles this week, and we feel for him.
Man who called for Cooper Rush to start games and then had to live through Cooper Rush starting a game being terrible, just can't catch a break, Man reaping what he sows, can't catch a break. So that part is slightly stupid. I am, however, with him that just close the damn blinds, Jerry, And it is kind of hysterical just how hard he's digging his heels in against that.
It's not a Shouty show, but was Mike Florio suggesting that the play calling needed to adjust for the Cowboys?
That's what Jerry has painted himself into. That's the corner that Jerry Jones has been painting himself into this week is Kellen Moore understood where the sun was going to come from. He knew, he understood, he got it.
What is available? So here's what's available. Handoffs to Zeke.
Yep.
Where he fumbles
where
into
everybody
the end
faces
zone again.
forwards. Yeah.
Hand off to Zeke and fades outside the numbers.
Right. Simply don't ask I tweeted, like, if I was Mike McCarthy, I simply wouldn't have tried to score in the end zone where the sun was streaming into. Only score in the other end zone.
Then you get the kicking issue. Is the sun in the holder's eyes?
Aubrey's good. Don't worry. You don't need to worry about it. The kicking game's fine.
I'm sorry, no, the kicker's fine because it's just in the receiver's eyes going.
It's only in that end zone, so you're fine. The other end zone's good.
So middle of the field.
Only try and score in the end zone without the sun.
There you go.
Kellen Moore understood that. The funny thing about those things is that, okay, let's treat
it's our home field advantage.
But even if you want to give Jerry, let's take his comments at face value and say, okay, rather than the absurdity that it is, let's treat that as a sensible argument for a minute, right? Jerry Jones thinks Kellen Moore understood the dynamic at work here. Well, that he got it. He understood. We know where the sun's coming from. He called his plays accordingly. Okay, then why'd you fire him? If he was so great, if he understood where the sun came from and called plays accordingly, consequently we were a 12-win football team, everything was great, why'd you let him go? That's on you again.
You should be Jerry's assistant.
This is the problem with this, is that you own the team and you're the GM. There is no decision that occurs that does not ultimately trace back to you. You can't just obfuscate and say it's somebody else's fault, because ultimately you were the guy that either hired or fired that guy.
I know this is your sweet spot for analysis, but we got to get to one more here.
All right.
And then we got Dean coming in.
So it's not even a case of, If only there was a way of like we could maybe buy some blinds, right? They're past that. The blinds are there. Somebody just needs to press the button for the blinds to be closed and Cowboys players not to get blinded. And Jerry's like, nope, you know where the sun is going to be. Adjust. Make the adjustment. I love it. I love it. It's content gold, and that's why the Cowboys are great.
We need the Spider-Man meme. You and Skip Bayless just pointing at each other, asking for blinds. That's what we need. Same guy.
I have become that which I hate. I have become Shouty Show.
Just shut the blinds, man.
That was quite Shouty Show, like. Yeah.
It was.
That's unfortunate.
Look,
it rather undermines our premise for this segment.
Look, it's hour 3 on a Monday morning. You can see how it comes out of you, right? You're on little sleep, and it's Jerry Jones. It's your hot button. Yeah. Good work, man. You made the segment.
That is a bit unfortunate.
You made the Shouty Show segment. Top notch. I mean.
Touche.
Now I'm nervous we might lose you.
Touche, producers. Touche.
Fox and ESPN, please don't steal Sam from us. All right, before we get to Dean, got to tell you about our friends over at Manscaped. Sam's going to tell you a little bit as well. It's all brought to you by Manscaped here today, the global leader in men's lifestyle and grooming. Every man knows the unbeatable feeling of a fresh barbershop shave. Now, what if I told you to no longer have to wait weeks or even months between appointments to experience it? Introducing Manscaped's newest innovation. It's the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver, the game-changing tool that brings the luxury of a professional shave right into your home. So you can head over to manscaped.com, join the over 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using the code MIC20, MIC20, for 20% off plus free shipping. Is that how you got rid of that little piece of facial hair?
No, I did not use the Chairman Pro. I used whatever the beard trimming device that they have.
Oh, okay.
But I did use the Manscaped deal to do it. It's precision trimming is what it is. That's how you can create. That's how you too can create a masterpiece like this. It does feel. This is a very fresh barbershop feel type of facial hair setup as well.
That's good, yeah.
It looks good. This is what you would come out of a barbershop with.
We stand behind everything that Manscaped makes. The Chairman Pro in particular, you get the skin-safe 4-blade foil for that close, smooth shave whenever you're looking to go completely clean. And you can also switch it up to the skin-safe stubble trimmer to keep your stubble looking sharp and polished.
Yeah, the beard hedger is what I used.
All right, so you get the beard hedger, you get the Chairman Pro, you get whatever you need. Chairman Pro today in particular, experience that shave as smooth as you deserve. You get 20% off plus free shipping with the code MIC20 over at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping. The code MIC20, MIC20, over at manscaped.com. We ready to bring Dean in?
I believe so.
Let's bring in Dean Blandino, master of all things officiating. Dean, how's it going, man? Welcome back.
I'm good. I just want to know, do I need to close my shades here? Do I need to...
If you can play through it, you know where the sun is in your own home. You have home field advantage.
I prepare for this. I know the time. I've got it all covered. Just want to make sure Sam's okay.
You know roughly a year in advance. Jerry keeps saying that. You understand where the sun's going to be at any given moment.
Exactly.
So, are they allowed to change the blinds on the fly? Because Arizona a couple of weeks ago, right? They had to shut the roof of the stadium because it started hailstones down. Took 10 minutes or whatever. Are you allowed as a team with a home field to actually manipulate that and say the blinds are going to be closed when we have the ball, they're not going to be closed when you have the ball?
No. So you make those decisions like roof open, roof closed 90 minutes prior to the game. And then if there is a weather issue where you have to close the roof, that would go through the league. It would have to take place typically at halftime, those types of things. So you couldn't just, hey, they're looking in the sun, let's keep it open, and then when we're looking in the sun, we'll close it. You couldn't do that.
Okay. So they would have to determine, before the game, we've decided we're going to actually use the blinds this time and not everybody's going to get blinded?
Yeah, but I don't think that's ever going to happen.
No.
Listening to Jerry.
Clearly.
It was meant, I read that he said it was meant to have the feel of an outdoor stadium.
Yeah.
And so that's,
He likes it. I mean, he likes the look of the sunlight streaming in, and if it happens to cost him the retinas of his star wide receiver from time to time, that's just a sacrifice worth making for aesthetics. That's Jerry's position.
It's aesthetically pleasing to watch CeeDee Lamb lose in the sun.
I do know that teams that go in there, they study that. Coin toss decisions are that's a factor. Late afternoon game. Are we going to be looking in the sun? That's definitely a factor. I know visiting teams have talked about that.
I would love to see somebody create, like a supercut highlight video of the number of times it's cost plays, because just anecdotally in my brain, I can think of 4 or 5 times where it's directly cost the Cowboys plays. I can think of one where it's cost the opposition. So like Jerry's point is it's an equal thing. I don't think it has been so far. I think it's genuinely cost the Cowboys more than it's cost their opponents.
But yeah, and they're obviously playing there 8 or 9 times a year, so they're gonna have more opportunities to be affected.
So, Dean, we've seen a couple late game face masks, Thursday night football in particular. Of course, everything gets blown up when it's in prime time. How do we solve this? How do we solve missing face masks in prime time?
Well, I think you start with, okay, let's try to get it right on the field. Is there something we're not doing? Is it positioning? Is it mechanics? So you're always going to start there, and then the conversation then shifts to, okay, instant replay, right? Do we need to start looking at these types of calls? And I think you look at the Sam Darnold play from a couple of weeks ago in the end zone and some others where it would be pretty obvious that it was a face mask and replay can come in. I think there are going to be plays where it's not so obvious, and you're still talking about judgment, and it's an official's judgment. Now you're giving it to somebody upstairs. Yes, they have video, they have more resources, but you're never going to get away from the human element. You're never going to get away from judgment. I do think now with all the cameras and everything that we've got, and it is more seamless to be able to communicate from the booth or from the command center in New York to the field. I think they got to look at that. Is it the last 2 minutes? Is it egregious? Is it something? I think they're going to look at it, but the competition committee has always taken a more measured approach. There's never been a situation where replay could create a foul other than that defensive offensive pass interference debacle that we had in 2019. I don't know. We'll see. But I think it's gonna if we get a play in a playoff game, a championship game, the Super Bowl, I think you could see a rule change. If the playoffs go well, everybody kind of tends to forget a little bit about week 8 of the regular season, and maybe we don't. It's going to be interesting.
Is that pass interference sort of experiment really the holdup? Because I just can't see a particularly strong argument for not correcting obviously egregious blown calls because of, well, replay can't create a foul where none exists. But that's the whole purpose of replay, is they missed something, so let's help them fix it, right? No, none of the officials on the field are happy with the outcome of that play where, oh no, neither one of us saw this face mask and now the game is completely changed because of it. The whole purpose is there's somebody watching that in New York who can hit a button and say, hey, you might want to take a look at this, you missed it.
Yeah, and I don't think the 2019 experience should prevent that from happening. I just don't think pass interference is the place to start. I think I think you do start with player safety. You do start with hits to the head neck area, face masks, those types of things, where there are some objective elements that replay can help with. The officials are top of that list. They don't want a game being decided on a missed call or an incorrect call. So to be able to have somebody with the video to be able to communicate that, I think that would be a good thing. You've got to keep it limited. I don't think anybody wants or even understands what would happen if we were just re-officiating from the booth every play. That would be, I think, catastrophic for the game. But to have it limited and for significant situations where it's obvious, I think that makes sense. And I think the committee has to look at that.
To just remind people, too, the 2019 instant replay on pass interference experiment, that became, like, it made sense in practice because you watch all these replays like, man, they missed pass interference. But we got to the point where they started challenging, there was how many offensive pass interference, pick plays. It was very, like, ticky-tack, little contact pass interference calls. It was awful. And so the face mask thing, like the Darnold one is blatant, right? Like I was watching the game, wanting to see one final drive as a fan, and we lost that because they missed a face mask, which is egregious. Do you worry about getting to like, oh, the pinky barely rubbed up against the face mask, we got to call that 15 yards versus the whole like he tugged at his face?
That's the concern, because as obvious as Darnold one, there's going to be one that's not as obvious, right? Yeah. Now we're looking at it and we're debating it, and either way, people are going to be upset. Either you make it a face mask or you don't. I still think if you can have a mechanism in place to prevent the Darnold play, then you live with the kind of the collateral damage, right? You try to mitigate it, but you live with it because again, you can't, right? Joe Burrow 2-point try. We've got 2 missed calls on that play, and the Bengals should have had another chance at a game winning or taking the lead late in the game with a 2-point try, and they didn't get that opportunity. So I think if you have resources and technology in place, then I think the league has to really consider it.
You mentioned that the playoffs is the kind of thing that can spur action, right? Where a really bad missed call or mistake officiating can create enough of a furore that they go, okay, we got to fix this. Is the same thing true for, because these have been on primetime island games, which sort of makes it even more blatant and egregious. Like, everybody is watching this one game. It's not buried somewhere at a 1 p.m. slate where there's 9 other games taking place. These are happening and determining primetime island games. Is that enough to make them go, we can't keep having these games decided by these calls?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. When I was in the officiating department, I said, I know there's going to be plays and we're not going to be perfect. Give me those plays 1 o'clock Sunday, right? Don't put them in prime time, because you do have more eyeballs. You do get a greater outcry, and there are people in the league office. And look, I get it. Like when something goes wrong on prime time, they see that, they react to that. The public, the league takes the fans and their perspective very seriously. Those are your paying customers. And if they're not happy, then you've got to consider that and make sure that they are happy and they're not walking away from games with a kind of a bad taste in their mouth. So that's absolutely, primetime games are it's more under the microscope, it's magnified more, and it can be a driver for change. But ultimately, it really comes down to the playoffs and that we saw it, right? The pass interference rule. The only reason we had that pass interference rule because of one play in the NFC Championship game, right? So if that happens, I think that's ultimately the biggest impetus. And sometimes regular season, people tend to kind of forget what happened, like I said earlier, during week 8.
The common sense rule, man. Those obvious Saints-Rams pass interference, Sam Darnold face mask. If there was just a way to offset those, right? That's the biggest thing.
Have there ever been occasions where the NFL has kind of fudged the protocols? Because since it's been connected to New York, it's felt like there have been plays where, something changed when the officials huddled up, right? And sometimes that happens, right? They just get together and one guy they change the call. But there have definitely been plays where it felt like some new information came to light, whether it was a replay that suddenly is ahead of them on a stadium or somebody in their ear. Have the NFL ever fudged that protocol? Because that would feel like a kind of easy way around it. Even if the competition committee is an off-season thing, somebody just get on the phone and say, hey, Sam Darnold had his head wrenched off in the end zone, right? That doesn't seem hard.
Someone drop a flag so we can legally talk about this.
No doubt that has happened. There's no question that has happened. And I'll tell you this from my own experience. And I'm at the Super Bowl, I'm in the command center, big game. If something like that happened, right, I would have said something, right? You can't have that. Look, it's not the protocol, but I think ultimately, if you can correct that type of mistake, that's that's a game deciding play. So it has happened. I don't know the particulars, but there's no question that officials do get help. And if some of that's the problem with some crews do it, some don't, then it's not consistent. If you make it the rule and you put parameters in place and guidelines and limits, then everybody knows, okay, yeah, they got help on that face mask. It was a scoring play, and we got the call right. And I think that's where you want to be.
There definitely needs to be, a process in place. But this is the thing that blows my mind about calls like that, is that nobody is going to be upset if you just fix it by fudging the rules, right? Even if it's not in place, we'll get down the road, we'll figure out how to actually put a framework around this and be able to do this wholesale. But if somebody from New York buzzed down and fixed that play against the Vikings, literally nobody is complaining. Nobody's going, well, that was against the protocol. This is a crime against the game. This is
Rams fans.
No doubt. In that vacuum, absolutely. But what does come up then is you get other teams going, wait a minute, I got screwed in week 6 You didn't fix that one.
Right.
Or, Cincinnati, you didn't fix that one. So I think that's the slippery slope. And you just got to, that's why I think if you put it in the rule and you put the controls in place, you don't have to worry about that. Hey, sometimes they might do it, sometimes they won't. It depends how obvious it is. You just, I agree. Nobody's going to say anything if we fix the Darnold play, but then it's the expectation is, hey, if I get one, I want you to fix it, even though that's not the rule.
Yeah.
Can you describe how college operates? Because in college, they're basically reviewing every play, not for face masks, right? But for, did a guy step out of bounds, whatever it is. Is that a more efficient protocol than what the NFL has?
It's interesting because the NFL started with coach's challenge and a very limited automatic review. And college has everything is automatically reviewed. And the NFL has kind of now migrated toward more automatic reviews. And college wants to go to add more coaches challenges because it's just too much on the replay official. I like a balance. I think there's a perfect world, and I think the NFL is probably closer to it where you scoring plays, turnovers, last 2 minutes, fourth down, turnover on downs, those types of things are automatically reviewed for just the reviewable aspects of the play. I think sometimes people assume with college that, everything's reviewed. Well, not everything. Like you said, you can't make a face mask. You can't look at holding. You can't look at non-reviewable aspects of the play. So I do think there's a balance. And the NFL is a little bit closer to making the significant plays automatically reviewed. So you don't have to worry about challenges and timeouts left, but give the coaches an opportunity to challenge plays that they think are significant outside of those windows.
The only other thing I was curious about, what are the kind of consequences for officiating crews when they screw up these plays? Obviously there's a system where they kind of get graded and that determines postseason assignments and those kinds of things. Is that the only consequence from a blown call? Like, players get fined after the fact for a face mask. Does a guy missing a face mask have any repercussions?
Well, it depends on, so they do get evaluated, and that evaluation process, like you said, it will decide playoff assignments, and ultimately, if you're evaluated and you're at the bottom of your position, each official is evaluated by position, so all the back judges, all the side judges, like that. If you're in that bottom tier after 2 or 3 years, you're let go. Your job security, your postseason assignments, which that comes with financial compensation, those types of things are all married to that evaluation system. Now, there are situations where if it goes above and beyond, typically not judgment, you miss a face mask, you miss a face mask. But if officials misapply a rule, if there's a significant clock error where they're supposed to be on top of the game clock, then they could get fined. We've fined officials, game checks. We've suspended officials for really rules-based things that you can't. Judgment's judgment, and if you start fining officials for misjudgment calls, that's like fining a player for a missed block. It's just, you can't go down that path because it will never stop. But you will have situations where officials above judgment make mistakes, and they are fined, they are suspended, and that's happened.
Like screwing up the coin toss, maybe. Which has happened multiple times now in NFL history, which is fun. We had a mailbag question for you, Dean, and the question was, do you have a favorite ejection story? Does anything top Fran Tarkenton's legendary 1974 ejection when he threw the ball at a defender after scoring a touchdown? So that's a question from our listeners here.
Well, I mean, one that I always found hilarious that I wasn't involved in, I don't know if you remember, Jamie Collins was with the Lions, and he was trying to explain to the referee, and I can't remember who the referee was, what happened, and he kind of just was demonstrating, and he lowered his head, and he happened to just bump the referee, and the referee just threw him out, just was gone, out. That one always, if you YouTube that one, it's pretty funny. It's Jamie Collins. I forget what year it was. It was a couple of years ago. I do remember Mike Carey, who was a longtime referee, really good referee. Steve Tasker, who was an incredible player for the Bills, special teams, like probably one of the greatest special teams players of all time. It was his final game. This is a guy that was a Buffalo legend. Final game in Buffalo, and it's this big tribute and this big celebration, and Mike Carey throws him out of the game, throws him out of his final game. And it was just one of those deals where you're sitting there going, what, it wasn't even that bad what he did. He was just kind of complaining about a call. I was like, come on, read the room, Mike. Let's not eject this guy in his final game.
Lastly, Dean, can I get an official's perspective on the mustache that I'm growing for Movember?
I heard the conversation earlier while I was waiting to come on. And I love the Manscaped products. This is not, and I'm not a paid spokesman. I use them. I wouldn't tell people necessarily that facial hair, and I'm not, you said, you made the comment, it looks like I came out of a barber shop. I'm thinking more like barber school, but that's just me.
Okay.
But I keep at it. I'm crazy about my facial hair. I like to try different things. Keep at it. You'll find something that works.
Well, the great thing is, so the plan is for every $100 I raise, I'm going to change it to something different, right? So this is the beauty, is we can keep going.
I love that. I wouldn't stick with this one very long, but I love it.
Dean, if you need more Manscaped products, Mike20 is your promo code. You can get 20% off if you're missing anything. If you need a Chairman Pro or whatever it might be. So, Dean, appreciate having you. Thanks for all the insight.
All right, guys, take care.
Take it easy.
I had a baseball story on top of the Tasker story, of course.
No, naturally, yeah.
I think it's kind of relevant. It's kind of funny. The late Louis Tiant, who just passed away. He's a Boston legend, Sam. Cuban pitcher, legend from the 70s. He was coaching in college. The school was Savannah Arts and Design, Savannah A&D, something like that. So he came up to play us, UMass Lowell, in a 2-game series. The legendary Louis Tiant. He comes up from Georgia to play the Lasher Park. It's like the best park in New England. He comes up, 2-game series against us, and somehow gets thrown out of like the first inning of the first game. Like, we had fans there, not to see us, to go see Louis. Guy's a little Boston legend. He gets thrown out of the first game because I think he called the umpire stinky or something like that. He's like, you're stinky today or something like that. The guy turns and throws him out. It's like Tasker getting thrown out of his retirement game.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Not ideal. Not ideal at all.
Anyway, Dean answered the tough questions.
Right.
Did a good job with that.
Absolutely. The most interesting thing there, I think, was we got confirmation that it's definitely happened, right? Where New York has been like, hey, you might want to fix this one. Even though it's not, there's no protocol for this. It's not it's technically allowed, but, come on.
And again, I would rather that happen because, the whole point, nobody would argue. If we go, the pass interference thing, I can't reiterate how egregious the pass interference thing was because coaches were throwing challenge flags in the littlest contact was getting reviewed in super slow-mo, and it's like, well, we have to call this pass interference. People are watching. Like, don't even change the protocol.
Right.
Just get it right.
Yeah. So
or say like, hey, we have autonomy now.
Right. Look, I think he's right that there should be a structure and a system put in place to sort of do this writ large. But the only negative to doing it ad hoc now, just to fix it, right, is, as he was saying, right, you're going to get a team calling up me and like, hey, how come mine didn't get fixed in week 3, right? That's just not a good enough reason to not do it, right? Okay, because the answer is easy, right? Yeah, we missed that one or we didn't screw it up or whatever, but like we needed to fix this one. It's just, it needed to get done. You want to make a framework for it, talk to the competition committee, we'll get to it in May or March or whatever, right? It's not a good enough reason to not fix critical island games that are getting determined by these blown calls, right? And it's already happened, so just fix it. Like, to me, that's a bigger breakdown in process than missing the call on the field. Yes, it should have been seen, particularly as 2 people had eyes on it. But the bigger breakdown is that even with no protocol in place, it's happened before. Somebody should have been able to get on the horn and say,
just do it.
Just throw the flag. Throw the damn flag.
Fix the egregious ones. I think we all agree.
Yeah.
We're going to do our first autopsy on the New York Giants. But first, got to tell you about our friends over at GameTime. I love going to games. I'm sure a lot of our listeners love going to games. And there's no easier way to go to games, concerts, comedy than with GameTime. Whether you're getting NFL tickets, college football tickets, like I said, any shows, GameTime is the place to do it. GameTime Picks, it's incredible. It filters out the fluff to show you only the deals that you want on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The curation makes it easier to save money on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. The all-in pricing toggle, you just click a button, you see the whole total up front, no surprise fees at checkout. You get the panoramic view of your seat within the app, which is a great way to just know what you're getting into. And then they have a lowest price guarantee, or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. So your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry as well. Take the guesswork out of buying all your tickets with GameTime. So all you have to do is download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code CheckTheMic for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code CheckTheMic, CheckTheMic. You get $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, man, we tried this series a couple years ago, the autopsy of a dead team.
Mm-hmm.
Are we declaring the Giants as dead?
Yes.
They're 2-8. They're 2-8. What is you're always into like the cause of death.
Yeah.
Like, what is the cause of death?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm over there like, there's 17 different factors. We gotta consider a lot of things.
Yep.
And you like to get right to the point.
Yeah.
So how?
Well, there's like, a real autopsy has the same thing, right? There's a primary cause of death, and then there's like contributing factors, you know?
And I'm more of like, I like to list all the contributing factors, and you're just like, it's Daniel Jones. So I'm not trying to put words into your mouth, but what would you consider the cause of death here for the Giants?
Yeah, so I was trying to think. It's definitely some form of like 7 deadly sin type of thing, right? I'm trying to work out, is it greed? Did they get too greedy when they tried to keep both Daniel Jones and Saquon in the same offseason? Or was it like hubris, where they got too cocky and thought they were better than they were, and actually we can go crazy instead of, hey, we kind of overachieved this year and then beat the Vikings in the playoffs, and actually we're not that good a team?
It's 2022 hubris.
Okay, yeah.
I have stood by this point that the Brian Daboll's first year as head coach, Joe Shane's first year as general manager, they stepped into a real rebuilding Giant situation, and they overachieved unbelievably. They made it to the playoffs. They won a playoff game against the Vikings with Daniel Jones at quarterback. They got the best year of Daniel Jones' career. They had a healthy Saquon Barkley who looked good. They ran the ball effectively. They had Wink Martindale calling plays on the defensive side of the ball, and with his wild blitz schemes. And they won more games than they should have. But if you truly evaluated the 2022 Giants roster, you would, and if you could be honest with yourself, I forget, was it 10 wins, whatever they had, you would look back and say, this is a 5-win team. This is really a 5-win roster. And maybe we found a great coach in Daboll, but we can't treat this as a playoff team that needs to take the next step, or a playoff team that needs to keep the band together and then will grow in year 2. That was a false positive in year 1. So that was the cause of death for 2024 was 2022.
Yeah.
And overachieving that season.
Yeah, that I think is true. So it's just a case of how you characterize that, the approach to that offseason, really. That's what it is. It was that offseason that killed them this year, right? Where the obvious thing to do was to franchise tag Daniel Jones, not tie yourself to him, hedge because you didn't know what it was going to look like going forward. Remember, it's easy now with hindsight to say, well, that was just outright dumb to keep Daniel Jones. There was no way that was going to work. But they had overachieved that year. It was the first year with Brian Daboll, offensive-minded, guru head coach, and they didn't have a great situation. Like, the support structure, personnel-wise, around Daniel Jones wasn't great. So I think it was a reasonable thing to say Daniel Jones could and maybe should be better the subsequent year, right? When we get him improved receivers, when we get him improved offensive line, it made logical sense to say Daniel Jones should be better in the future. But it also made logical sense to say you can't bank on that. I mean, it's not necessarily going to happen. You can't guarantee that if we improve the situation around him, he will get better. So the obvious thing to do is to hedge, put a franchise tag on him, and we'll see.
And all that said, is if we're going to have empathy for Colin Cowherd misspeaking, I have empathy for the GM, whose sole purpose is to get a good quarterback, first and foremost. And this is why I say don't just judge the GM by that. I think in the building, after they hedged, they also realized last year, and I was so excited that we did get to see the behind-the-scenes view of Joe Shane and the front office and all the discussions that they were having. If we did not have that behind-the-scenes look, we wouldn't know how adamant he was about trying to trade up in the draft. Like, they realized, now maybe it was a year too late, And look, anytime you're hedging on a quarterback, anytime you're not locking up a quarterback for 5 years at whatever the peak price is, like just happened this offseason with Trevor Lawrence, with Tua, with Jordan Love, anytime you're doing anything below that, you're hedging your bet. Like you're saying we don't fully believe in you. So chances are it's not going to go well. So they knew, but they didn't have an alternative. The Giants didn't have an alternative unless they just kept drafting whatever quarterback was available there over the other pieces. So this offseason, they tried to trade up to get Drake May. They tried. Now you could argue maybe they shouldn't have gotten Malik Neighbors and they should have drafted J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix or Bo Nix or whoever your favorite quarterback was. They tried, though. They did try to trade up for Jaden Daniels. They tried to get up there for Drake May, and they couldn't do it. And they're stuck with another year of Daniel Jones, and the hedge obviously didn't work.
Right. But even that, I mean, yeah, anytime you don't have a quarterback, you're in a tough spot, right? So it's not like if they had simply done what we were suggesting and franchise tag Daniel Jones, either let Saquon walk a year earlier or whatever, tried to keep him with a bigger deal. It's not like that would have fixed everything because you still theoretically would have ended up in the same place of Daniel Jones didn't work out. You would just be a year ahead in terms of trying to fix it, right? So this offseason, they would have gone in a completely different direction. Like they'd just be a year ahead of the rebuild. Maybe they still would have brought in Malik Neighbors and gone that route and not achieved the trading up for the quarterback in the draft, or maybe they would have gone even harder to get that guy. But you would be a year further down that road than you are now, which is only coming to the realization this year that, hey, the Daniel Jones thing definitely isn't going to work, right? And we need to go in a completely different direction. So, I mean, that's the thing. It's not a fix. It's not like you do that and everything's great. It's just that you would have been further ahead in fixing it.
I'll tell you what it's not, though. It's not the Saquon Barkley decision. That's not the cause of death here with the Giants. If they had other pieces in place, and they let Saquon Barkley walk, and they discovered Tyrone Tracy in the draft as they did. I know we just fumbled to lose the game on Sunday, but other than that, we would be saying, wow, amazing, right? I mean, if all the other pieces were in place, if this was the Eagles, right? If the Eagles had walked away from Saquon Barkley and picked up Tyrone Tracy, we'd be carrying Howie off the field. Amazing, Howie. You did it again. You didn't pay the running back, and you did bring in the rookie running back to replace him, who's very effective. If he's not completely Saquon, he's very effective. We would be complimenting that move. That is not the reason why the Giants are 2-8.
No, I actually think they treated the Saquon Barkley thing pretty well, other than the franchise tag part, right? Right away, Joe Shane was making it clear that they had a line that they were not really prepared to go beyond in terms of Saquon's contract, right? I think that's good decision making and good team building, roster construction, roster management is, okay, you're a really talented player, you're incredible, but running backs are simply not worth more than this figure, right? And we're not prepared to go beyond that figure. And that's why, if you want to criticize them, I would criticize wanting to keep him on a franchise tag, as opposed to just simply saying, this is what we're willing to give you for a long-term extension. If you're not willing to do that, we will simply let you go. I think, and that's where it comes back to greed a bit, is that it sort of felt like they didn't want to draw that hard a line in the sand and say, like, they had the principle in place and they kind of backed away from the principle at the last second and went, actually, if we give Daniel Jones the extension, then we can tag Saquon and keep him for a year and we can keep both, right? Whereas really, if you were being super disciplined, that offseason you would have said, we're not keeping Saquon. He doesn't want to sign for this deal. We'll just let him go now and go in a different direction then. If that would be my criticism of the Saquon thing, as opposed to they should have kept him this offseason.
Yeah, and to me that all goes back to, like, we're going to try to build on 2022 success when they're probably a 5 or 6 win team. And if they had been a 5 or 6 win team, they blow it up. They start from scratch. Last question on the Giants here. Cause of death being 2022. Are they better off now than they were in 2022? Because I talk about them not being a good roster and overachieving, but if you look at some of the players they had, the Julian Loves of the world and the Leonard Williams of the world, they still had some good solid players, right? They had some just solid players. I use the word solid a lot, but you need a bunch of those in the NFL. Did they have more solid players in 22 than they have now?
I think so. A lot is going to depend on this draft class that they had last year, which looks like it could be an amazing foundation piece to rebuild this franchise from. Like every single one of those players right now looks like he might be a really keystone piece of this. I mean, Malik Neighbors looks like a superstar when he's healthy. Tyrone Tracy, other than fumbling the game away, looks like a fantastic running back addition for an absolute bargain price. Drew Phillips at cornerback, Theo Johnson at tight end. They're getting contributions from the entire draft class. That could really help rescue them. The only thing is the quarterback. Where are we getting one from? And that's obviously the most important decision that any team needs to make. So, okay, if we're rebuilding this team now, cause of death, hubris from a couple of years ago, right? This has been a death that's been coming for a couple of years. So how do we fix it? The first decision starts to come down to, well, you made this point before, do you judge a GM solely on the quarterback decisions that he makes or does not make? Joe Schoen's biggest problem right now is that a couple of years ago, he made the goof. They gave Daniel Jones a contract instead of franchise tagging him or moving on. That cost them. That set them back. Daniel Jones isn't the guy. He wasn't able to execute a trade for a quarterback in last year's draft. So now they're sitting there with Daniel Jones there and no quarterback.
So I think they might. This draft class does look pretty good, right? You get Neighbors at 6. You have a safety in Tyler Nubin. You've got Tyrone Tracy. I mean, Theo Johnson looks like a player at tight end. It does look like a good draft class. I do feel like they're moving in the right direction. I didn't love Shane's moves the 2 years prior coming into this year.
Right.
So it does look like it's a better – the O-line looks a little bit better. It looks like a better foundation for the next quarterback. Because let's make no mistake, there's a next quarterback coming.
Oh, yeah.
Next year. So whether it's Shadur Sanders or whoever they're going to – I mean, and again, it's a wide open draft class. Is it Cam Ward? Is it – who knows?
Yeah.
But there's a quarterback coming. That's the move. I mean, they're going to draft a quarterback and hope that he's the guy. And I think when you start to look at some of these young pieces in year 2, a lot of these rookies in year 2, it's going to look like a better foundation probably now than it was a couple years ago. And I think Shane deserves at least a touch of credit for that.
Yeah, well, so, I mean, his offseason last year actually looks really good in totality, right? You've got the draft class we talked about. Tyler Nubin was another guy I didn't mention that as part of that draft class looks really good. But also, like, Jermaine Illuminor has been a really good upgrade for not much money for that offensive line. A lot of the moves they made last offseason look really, really good. The year before, it's almost the exact reverse. Like, almost everything they did that offseason was not good, both in terms of the goof we talked about, the Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley franchise tag dynamic, but also like Deonte Banks being their top draft pick. I mean, he's perennially being benched and then reinserted in the starting lineup right now. That's a pick that hasn't worked out yet. So they're almost like he's had one bad year as a GM across the board and then one good year as a GM across the board. But honestly, it kind of comes down to, does he carry the can for the Daniel Jones mistake? Or do we say, actually, we like the direction this team is moving in overall. Now he's the guy to find the next quarterback.
You also have 2 picks that were chalk picks at the time 2 years ago, Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal.
Yeah.
And Thibodeau's gotten worse since his rookie season, and Evan Neal has been a train wreck so far, even though he played a little bit better in recent weeks. But
that's another one of those like decisions when you're the owner, right? Evaluating the performance of your personnel guy effectively, right? Does he get blame for essentially doing what everybody would have done if that guy doesn't work out?
They were the consensus top players. And you might say, oh, don't listen to the consensus. And maybe I'm just giving a pass to everybody right now.
That's what I'm
like,
saying.
Oh, you can't make a decision on quarterbacks. You can't make a decision on players. But, like, again, the guy that had 2 straight good drafts doesn't mean he's going to have the third one.
Right.
The guy who had 2 bad drafts doesn't mean he's going to have a third bad one. What do you do with that information?
Like, on the one hand, he is the guy responsible for drafting good players and not bad players. On the other hand, what you were saying by essentially looking at that consensus is there's nobody you could have put in that job who would have made a different pick, right? That's the problem. So do you fire a guy because he made a couple of picks that haven't worked out, or do you say every single personnel guy I could have had in that role would have made the same picks, so it's not his fault? That's, I think, a difficult question to weigh. I don't know what the answer to that is.
Yeah, so that is like through that lens, I think Joe Schoen, again, I don't know if they were bad picks. Was there something underlying that they should have known about Thibodeau and Evan Neal that they shouldn't have taken them, but those looked like fine picks at the time?
So if we're fixing him, if we're fixing the Giants, are we keeping Joe Schoen in the job?
I mean, I would take over.
Well, you're not allowed to take over.
I can't be the GM?
No, in the theoretical world we're dealing with.
I'm giving him and David.
We're ownership, not GMs.
I think I'm giving them one more year.
Okay.
I don't know if that's going to happen.
Right.
But I think I'll give them one more year.
Okay. So we're starting our fixing with they got one more year.
Go find the quarterback.
Find the quarterback.
Because look, I think if you look at Daboll's career,
they've got some cap space to play with.
Yeah.
So, they're in the market in free agency. You're probably not finding your quarterback in free agency. You're in the running for the number 1 overall pick. You got that pick. You haven't traded away or anything. So you are going to be in a position to draft the next guy at the top of this draft.
Information is not the picks that they've made. The little we know behind the scenes was that Joe Shane seemingly loved Drake May and his son loved Jaden Daniels. They at least liked the right guys. It doesn't always show in moves. Right. It shows in what you believe. So maybe they'll get the right guy this year. I'll give him one more year.
I mean, I want to keep Joe Shane around just so I can get the input from his son.
His son's right on.
Hey, kid, who do you like at the top of this draft?
His son's probably a big Commanders fan now.
Yeah. Okay, so they are going to get to draft the next guy. I mean, that's ultimately the key, right? They got a first-round pick. That might be the number 1 overall pick by the time all is said and done. Regardless, it's going to be a pick high enough to get you the next quarterback. Everything hinges on getting that right.
I know Brian Burns is playing well this year. He's fine. I think that's a lot of money for Brian Burns, where they're going to need more help elsewhere. They need corner help. They need pass rush help next to Dexter Lawrence on the interior. Still probably need even more offensive line depth to make sure that thing doesn't get worse, and then another complementary piece to Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, I think they still need to keep throwing bodies at that offensive line as well. Evan Neal didn't play badly. The most recent game he had to start, he's looked terrible
It's
every other
early.
Right, every other game of his career pretty much. So that's an area you probably want to look at. If they're in the offensive line market and free agency is a place, I think, to achieve that. It's not a great looking draft or not a great looking class in terms of tackles, So if you are looking for that right tackle or the left tackle, I guess, and if you are looking for an extra tackle, Andrew Thomas is there, Illuminor, solid enough. Do you want to upgrade that, or do you want to look back in the interior? Our guy Brad Spielberger has obviously looked ahead to our previous colleague, current friend.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Has looked at the free agent class and is like, you thought the last couple were rough. The upcoming one looks really rough. So might not be a great class to find, high-end starters, but
solid.
Bring in bodies.
Solid.
Keep bringing in bodies.
They need more solid. O-line, back seven, need more solid. Every pass rusher, need more solid everywhere else. All right. We good with the Giants? Did we fixed them a little bit. It's mostly a cause of death discussion, though.
Yeah. I mean,
we'll fix them in 5 minutes this offseason,
right.
as we always
We got to give them some kind of pathway to succeeding. Look, I think obviously cause of death we've identified. I think the pathway to fixing them is give Joe Shane one last chance. And this is the QB you tie him to, right? Go identify your guy, find me the future, and then the rest of the offseason is effectively making sure that guy has the platform to succeed, right? Malik Neighbors was a great step in the right direction. Illuminor, like the little bits and pieces they've added, good steps in the right direction, but let's solidify that. Let's make sure that Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders or whoever it's going to be, we're not looking at this in June and saying this rookie's going to get his ass kicked because the situation around him is so bad.
And turn those they have 8 draft picks right now. Turn 8 into 12. Always my answer.
Right.
Turn 8 into 12. Add more depth to this roster. All right, we got some breaking news we have to discuss. Adam Schefter. The Colts have gone back to Anthony Richardson as the starting quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. As I said, more information has been brought to the table. Joe Flacco has turned back into Joe Flacco. It's Anthony Richardson's time now going forward. The 4-6 Colts going back to Anthony Richardson. So I expected this. You did not.
I didn't necessarily not expect it. I just don't. It feels directionless to me. The problem
doesn't to me. They took a shot. Joe Flacco, when they were 4-4, Joe Flacco was playing better football than Anthony Richardson, and Anthony Richardson also had just tapped his helmet on a play.
Pat McAfee was just out there lamenting the shit show that is the direction, the organization, the functionality of the Indianapolis Colts franchise right now. A franchise that he used to play for and has an intimate knowledge of, and its own leadership, and Kenny Moore was just calling out effectively after last week's game. This does not feel like a well thought out, coherent strategy for the single most important position on that roster that will determine the direction of the team going forward, right? I understand, and the only saving grace can be if the benching was a punishment benching for Richardson being so naive as to think he can tap out of a game and then tell people about it afterwards, right? That's the only way you can defend this decision.
I think that's the most logical reason.
Now, my question is, if that is the reason, from an internal point of view, it probably doesn't matter. But I think they look bad for this in any other explanation. If that is the explanation, it's the only way they don't look bad, and you probably can't tell people that's the reason. So if you're Shane Steichen,
look, I think there's percentages. I think that's a part of the reason. If the backup quarterback was Sam Ehlinger with zero track record of success, they probably don't make the move. So two things happened. Anthony Richardson opted out, and I will repeat, if every former player that's on TV was like, that's unacceptable,
right,
then the current players are probably saying that's unacceptable. So something had to change in the locker room. And you happen to have Joe Flacco, who, to repeat, had played better football than Anthony Richardson to this point, and they were 4-4 when they made this move. So those two things combined was like, all right, we're going to try to make a little run here, and the kid needs to sit down for a bit. 2 weeks happened. Flacco started playing not like 23 Flacco or 22 or 21 Flacco when he was with the Jets. He started playing like 2018, like the dude needs to retire. He did retire at one point. He started playing like retired Joe Flacco or on the couch Joe Flacco.
Right.
So more information was brought to the table. He's not bringing our team back. Richardson sat for 2 weeks. Hopefully they feel like he's got his head in the right place and maybe earned the trust of his teammates. Whatever was lacking is hopefully back within 2 weeks, and we get the kid back out there because ultimately he needs experience. He started like 20 games in his entire career since high school.
But so if Shane Steichen came out and said, look, clearly a mistake was made in terms of Richardson tapping out of a game and then telling everybody about it afterwards, we needed to essentially reinforce that that's not cool. There needed to be accountability for that. We sat him down for a couple of weeks. Joe Flacco came in. Now we're going back to Richardson. If he came out and said that, I would feel a lot better about this as a direction, because that would make some sense.
Why does he have to say that to the public?
That's the problem.
What's the point? You put it out in the public, and then half the people are like, "Look at this idiot! Can't even control his own team." When people admit mistakes in public, half the people are like, oh, look at that humility. And the other people are like, you're an idiot, never should have made that mistake.
So that's the problem, is that if he says it out loud, it doesn't necessarily do anybody any good. But not saying it out loud leads you to suspect that the alternative is true, which is they simply are rudderless right now, and they're just lurching from one quarterback to the other without any coherent plan. That is a problem, because Richardson right now is a sinking ship, right? We drafted this guy off the back of staggering, unique physical traits that have literally never happened before. I mean, the RAS or whatever, the relative athletic score, RAS, however people actually say that out loud. He had the highest one that's ever been recorded for a quarterback, right? When you factor in athleticism along with size, and he's literally the most athletic quarterback that's ever entered the game, right? But he's wildly inexperienced and wasn't particularly good in college. So you draft this kid who wasn't a particularly good college quarterback, who has zero experience effectively, and you take him just because he's the most athletic and athletically gifted physical set of tools you've ever seen before. And it didn't work yet. It hasn't been good. There's been flashes. He still has like the greatest throw of any quarterback this season, but the overall baseline has been pretty miserable. So if you've sat him down for that reason, well now, okay, what's the way to rebuild that? What is the pathway to developing him? It almost certainly isn't sit him down for 2 weeks and then see if it's fixed. That's the problem. So if you don't say out loud, our reason for this was we had to bench him because he basically lost the locker room, and it was an accountability thing. If you don't say that out loud, you automatically think, well, if maybe they didn't do that. Maybe it's just they don't know what they're doing with this kid.
mean, the Panthers sat Bryce Young. It was for more than 2 weeks. He came back and he looked different.
But that is a
There's
different
evidence of
situation. I don't think that Richardson was playing at a Bryce Young level where you're like, he has to be sat down now because this is such a train wreck. Nothing is working. I don't think that's where they were. So it's not the same situation where you're like, when the Panthers sat down Bryce Young, they were effectively giving up on Bryce Young, right? They were like, we've seen a year and 2 games or whatever of this. It's miserable. We're pulling the plug, and then we'll throw him back in later, and maybe that'll change things. But, like, to hell with it. It's got to happen. The Colts were not – I don't think they were there. I think they were like, this is a wildly inexperienced kid who's raw. It's not working right now. We're sitting him down. But he's still our guy, right? And if he's still your
they
guy,
wanted to save the season with Flacco playing.
But if he's still your guy, then the question is, what is the pathway you're putting him on to get him back to that level? And that almost certainly did not include putting him back in the starting lineup 2 weeks later. That's the problem with this thing.
All right, man, we got to get to prize picks. I got my lineup for the week. I think I've won 5 times here. Ben, have we won 5 times? Prize picks lineup of the week. You guys can join as well. Promo code Check the Mic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. Download the app, and you guys can join in. I know some of our listeners are listening very closely because they like to tail my lineup.
Well, apparently that's very successful so far.
So far, so good. It feels like a lot of pressure on me to keep it going. So here we go. I'm going A.J. Brown, Eagles, wide receiver, more than a half touchdown, receiving or rushing touchdown. It's going up against the Commanders. It's Thursday night. We'll know Thursday night. I love when we add the stats here. 12 receiving touchdowns allowed to receivers. That's the tied for the third most in the NFL. I don't trust Washington's defense enough. So A.J. Brown's going to find the end zone.
At least they're probably not going to match him up with Emmanuel Forbes every play.
They probably won't have Forbes. Is Lattimore playing? This could be fun.
Right.
So I'll take A.J. Brown with the touchdown. Didn't consider the Lattimore angle, but we're still rolling with this. And then I'm going to go a couple QBs here. I'm going to go Jared Goff, more than 230.5 passing yards. He's going up against the Jags at home. And we're coming off of Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions. I can't believe he threw 5 interceptions. It's so bad. They've been playing a bunch of road games. They're back in the dome. Jags can't stop anybody defensively. Goff's going to go off this weekend with all the passing yards. Jags allowing over 260 passing yards per game, third most in the NFL. And so I feel like this projection, I feel good about this projection coming off of Goff, a little low here with the 5 interceptions. He's going to bounce back well. And then Russell Wilson. I'm going to take more than 215.5 passing yards for Russell Wilson. They're going up against the Ravens, and I think it's going to be not a shootout necessarily, but I think to beat Baltimore, you're going to have to chuck it around, right? Their pass defense has been worse than their run defense this year. I think it's going to be a good close game, and they're going to need Russ to make those big plays. And we're talking a couple deep balls here, right? A couple George Pickens here and there, Mike Williams, a couple deep balls to hit the projection this week. So that's my lineup for the week. A.J. Brown, more than the half touchdown. Jared Goff, more than 230.5 passing yards. And Russell Wilson, more than 215.5 passing yards.
Yeah, I kind of like all 3 of those, actually.
You do?
I think that's pretty good. I like that.
Last week, I felt a little less confident about my lineup, and it still worked out. I feel better about this week, but we'll see. Thursday night, it's all telling. Thursday night with A.J. Brown here.
Who was it? Was it Janko that pointed out the hilarity of Russell Wilson having eye black in his official
can we put
headshot photograph?
The image back up? Russ.
That's peak Russell Wilson. He's ready, game ready, just taking the photo.
That's why he's in the lineup this week.
Yeah.
If you have eye black for the lineup, you're ready.
Yeah.
Eye black for the photo. Just classic Russell Wilson. So you guys can join as well. Again, promo codes Check the Mic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5 over at PrizePicks. And just, general shout out to PrizePicks, presenting sponsor of Check the Mic. All right, man, it's time. We've got a couple more segments here.
Yep.
The stat of the week. We started this last week. The mind-blowing stat of the week. So do you want to go through these here?
Yeah, so obviously we've asked people to send these in to us as well, to either tweet at us or email them in. Check the mic at the33rdteam.com is the email address. For any ridiculous stat or fact or whatever quirk you see coming out of any given week's games, we're keeping track of them as well. And we're going to have, a couple of runners up and then a winner for the data point stat of the week. What order did I say these were going in? Rodgers,
Cardinals,
All right.
Burrow, just to give them away.
From our guy, Josh Dubow, who is always a hero when it comes to these stats. Games when Aaron Rodgers threw 20 or more passes and averaged less than 4.6 yards per attempt. 2 times in 10 games with the Jets. 3 times in 237 regular season and playoff games with the Packers.
Yeah, he's getting old, man.
That's pretty stark.
Yeah, it is different.
Very different.
It does feel different with Rodgers in the Jets this year.
Evidently has been different, according to that tweet.
We'll see what ends up happening there, but I think we go back and, as a Tom Brady guy here, a reminder that Brady at 40, 41 years old is winning MVPs and going to Super Bowls and pretty effective until he was 45, and the only quarterback in his 40s to ever do that. Very difficult to be able to do that, and we're starting to see that a little bit with Rodgers, with Breeze, Peyton. A lot of those guys were unable to do that.
In Rodgers' defense, nobody took a hatchet to Brady's Achilles, so that helped, I would assume.
No, I think that certainly is a fact.
This next one is from Mark Dalton, who posted, for the 3rd straight home game, the Cardinals did not allow a touchdown. Chargers, Bears, Jets. The last time that happened for the franchise was almost a century ago. The 19th of September, 1926, to the 31st of October, 1926, where they were the Chicago Cardinals, I believe.
Those stats usually, if something happened for the first time since, pre-World War II.
Yeah. I mean, that does at least post-date the Racine Cardinals, but they were the Chicago Cardinals at that point.
September 19th is my dad's birthday. That started 20 years before my dad was born.
Yeah.
That's it's quite a stat. And good for the Cardinals. I apologize. I apologize to the Cardinals.
Yeah,
for
not
the early season hater.
But the winner this week was from Opta Stats, where there have been 2 instances in NFL history where a quarterback had the following: 30-plus completions, 300-plus passing yards, 4 touchdown passes or more, multiple 40-plus yard touchdown passes, and no more than 1 interception in a single game, and still lost. Those 2 instances were Joe Burrow versus the Ravens in Week 5 and Joe Burrow against the Ravens this week. It's only happened in NFL history twice, and both times it was Burrow against the Ravens this year.
That's wild. I mean, if it was just Burrow, that'd be wild. It's Burrow against the Ravens.
In the same year.
It's crazy. I tweeted yesterday, or a couple days ago, the 4-6 Bengals have an MVP candidate in Joe Burrow. I will still call him an MVP candidate. Yeah. Offensive Player of the Year candidate in Jamar Chase, and Defensive Player of the Year candidate in Trey Hendrickson.
And none of it matters.
But they're 4-6. I mean, then there's 2 ways of looking at this. They're 4-6, but they're also 3 or 4 plays away from being a 7 or 8 win team, and being considered one of the best teams in the NFL. It is a crazy season for the Bengals.
I mean, in this year where I believe that 7th AFC playoff spot is going to be very wide open for teams to win it. I mean, the Bengals are not dead and buried yet at 4-6.
Yeah,
they should be, but they're not.
And if they got in and went to Baltimore, Pittsburgh,
they just need to get in,
or Buffalo, you'd be like, okay, they've got it. They're the team you don't want to play, but they still have to play the Steelers twice. They still have a tough road.
It's still very difficult for them to get there. But if they get in on January, even with the weaknesses that this team has, I mean, they've already come a play or 2 away from beating Baltimore. They've already come a play or 2 away from beating Kansas City. Those are 2 teams we expect to be at the sharp end in January. They've already shown they're capable of beating, even if they didn't actually achieve it, which is, okay, that's a fair point. They didn't actually get that done, but they've shown they can at least take both of those teams to the final play of the game, effectively.
All right, man, we've got a new segment coming up in just a minute. But first, I want to take a moment to say, I'm going to say thanks to you today. Thankful for you, Sam.
Excellent.
You're my podcast partner here, and we took a chance going hanging out with 33rd Team and moving to start Check the Mic, and it's an exciting venture. So I'm thankful for you. I usually thank my family here, but we'll go with you today because this month's all about gratitude, and it's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we're trying to make our best, try our best to make sense of everything, and in this crazy world, it's not always easy. So that's where our friends at BetterHelp come in. If you're thinking about getting therapy or if you have considered this, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire. You get matched with a licensed therapist. You switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So BetterHelp is helping a lot of people and doing it on their own terms. So let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. You can visit betterhelp.com/checkthemic today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/checkthemic. You get 10% off your first month over at BetterHelp.
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously grateful to all of our sponsors, but I think there's a particular extra layer of importance to what BetterHelp does. The fact that they are able to help people and kind of destigmatize the whole area of mental health and remove the barriers for people to actually go and get help is huge. So really happy that we are partners, I guess, with them.
BetterHelp.com/checkthemic, 10% off your first month. We have a new segment.
We do.
You're going to try to stump me?
Well, long-term listeners of the show will know that you have some freakish ability to just pluck numbers out of the air and be right? Like when I was like, what is, what George Pickens' career contested catch rate is, and you just nail it. You shouldn't know that, right? Maybe you can get in the ballpark, but you had like the number without having looked it up. So, and we've kind of questioned this. We're like, how do we take advantage of this, right? Now, clearly the way to take advantage of it at some point is getting you to predict the lottery numbers, right? But first of all, we're going to test it. We're going to test its efficacy, and we have a list. What I wanted was game show cue cards, we check the mic cards. I can just go through like a game show. Maybe if this takes off, people
we'll see how the segment does.
We'll get the game card, the cue cards. Until now, it's just a list. These are a list of numbers that you should not know. You should not know these numbers. Some of them you shouldn't even be in the ballpark of, and we're going to see how close you get to the correct answer just by plucking it out of the sky.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes, let's do it.
Lamar Jackson has the most rushing yards among quarterbacks this season. What is his total?
Oh my gosh.
I forgot that was coming up. Yeah, there's a picture of old school Steve there as well.
2006.
That's some good facial hair.
That's in Chicago.
Yeah.
That's where that's from. Please don't ever search the internet for pictures of me. That is ridiculous.
So
Lamar has 550.
Stop. 538. You were close.
I was going to say 540 actually.
All right.
Sorry.
Here we're getting ever more obscure with these. How many players have recorded a tackle this season?
No, this is ridiculous.
Exactly. You should not know this.
There's 30, 20. Let's say 750.
836. Okay, this is good. He's not nailing these.
It's kind of ballparky.
The Panthers have been outscored more than any team this season. What is their point differential?
Minus 100.
Minus 143.
Okay, I'm off. I was off. I went like first instinct.
Yeah,
I didn't do the math. I know.
This is good because I think I would be annoyed if you were getting all these. Quite annoyed.
Good research by you here.
This is not me. I had no part of this.
Ben do all this work for you?
Other people were involved. Ben certainly involved. I think Anthony was involved in fact checking. A lot of people other than me were involved in putting this together. I'm simply the game show host here. How many times since 2000 has there been a quarterback with 20 or more pass attempts but fewer than 100 yards in a game?
Oh, jeez. Definitely shouldn't know
this. This includes the year 2000, I'm told, I believe.
Mark Brunell did it one time that year, week 6.
Well, that's one.
So that's one.
Yeah.
I assume, let's see.
Feels like you're going to be way off on this one.
4 times a year? 84 times.
This is the biggest failure you've had so far. 244, apparently.
That's that many times?
So it says.
20 plus attempts and fewer than 100 yards? I didn't think it was that often.
Deshaun Watson was traded to the Cleveland Browns in 2021. How many 200 or more yard passing games does he have with them?
With the Browns?
Yep.
5.
6. Close. How many times has a player rushed for 120 or more yards since 2000, not including the playoffs?
How many times has any player rushed for 120?
Correct.
Since 2000. That happens 1,197 times.
1,505. Now we're getting.
I'm not that good anymore.
As of the 2021 census data, what percentage of U.S. residents claim to have Irish ancestry?
Let's see. What percent of U.S. residents?
I will accept either a percentage or a total number of millions of people.
0.8%.
Ooh, that's a bad guess.
Really?
Yeah.
Irish
everybody,
ancestry?
Everybody in
Oh,
America.
ancestry.
Yeah.
I thought I was
How
thinking.
many people in America
Hold on,
claim
sorry,
to be
I apologize.
Irish?
I'm thinking citizenship.
No.
Ancestry.
How many
is
people in America claim to be Irish?
About 40% probably. But legit 28%.
9.5%.
That's it?
31.4 million
Everybody
people.
says they're Irish.
I thought that was way undercooked as well, so I'm with you. 25,000 plus people have played in the NFL. How many were born in Ireland?
The one guy.
The one guy?
2? Is it 2 now?
No, it's not.
I don't know this.
It's 11.
That's not up my alley.
No, apparently.
Anything with Irish ancestry.
But you're a British Isles expert.
I am.
Steve, you played in 287 games during your baseball career from 2004 to 2011. How many batters did you hit?
Jeez. Probably 8 a year. 65?
37, apparently.
That's it?
That includes the minors, foreign, and independent is what's in
Yeah, you have to add up
parentheses here.
all those because I played in so many.
For bonus points.
I've told the story though, but no one in baseball history has ever done this. I guarantee. You've heard this before. I hit 3 batters in a row, and then the next batter reached first on catcher's interference.
Yeah.
That sequence of 4
never
things
happened
has
before.
never ever. I mean, that's like Opta could not pull that out.
Right.
I dare you, Opta Stats, to find a time in professional baseball history where we had 3 hit batters and then a catcher's interference in 4 straight batters.
For bonus points, and I don't have the answer to this question, so I'm relying on your honesty, how many of those 37 were intentional?
Oh, at the professional level, 0.
None.
Yeah.
You never just decided I've had it with this guy.
No, I hit one
Being
guy
in.
in college on purpose.
Yeah.
I threw over the head of a kid in high school a couple times, then struck him out.
Yeah.
I think it was one intentional hit batter, and it was in college.
See, you just didn't have the killer instinct.
Because he was hitting on my buddy's girlfriend.
Yeah.
And then he hit a home run off me, and it was just felt like time.
Right.
The next time I faced him, then he became my teammate years later. We were on the same team later after I hit him.
I feel like we've really tapped into a body of evidence of why you didn't make it. I think not hitting. I
should hit more people.
I would have been hitting guys every other week. Deliberately.
I hit people enough.
All right.
I hit a guy in the head one time and he swung at it. So that was a strikeout. Kind of felt bad about that. Dude he had no chance.
That's not,
I hit a lot of only
rough.
37 batters in my career.
According to
How many
this.
home runs I give up?
I don't know that.
28 or something?
Final question.
Yes.
How many selfie videos has Skip Bayless posted on X since the first half of the Cowboys Week 1 game? This number will blow your mind.
Oh, see, I was going to go 1 a week and say 10.
And
10?
you wouldn't be in the ballpark.
How many? Like 35 or something? 50? Stop. 100?
63 videos, apparently.
63 selfie videos, just related to the Cowboys or generally?
I don't have that information to hand. It's not on my cue card.
Who did this research? Who counted those up?
Not me. Ben did it.
You
Ben
deserve
Allen.
a raise just for that.
So there we go. That was our Stump Steve segment. You got only a couple of those were even close. We have, in fact, stumped you.
You completely stumped.
Maybe
I'm not as good as the Schwab.
Well, maybe the magic only works in single instances. It takes 3 months to build up, and then if I ask you a random question, you'll nail it. And then you need 3 more months to capture the mojo again.
I'll be better next time. Some of those were in the ballpark. Some of those were decent. Like number of players with a tackle this year. I was within 100 of an 800 number. That's pretty solid.
I mean, look, part of the shtick is previously you've been absurdly bang on with stuff you should have no business knowing. None of these were that. So
I'm not a good game player.
No, we have successfully stumped Steve. So that worked. Perfect. Only the downside of that is now we can't ask you to predict the lottery numbers or go to Vegas.
I told you,
guess
once the pressure's
stuff.
on, I can't do it. It's just on a whim with the Kev Cole predicted score and everything.
Yeah.
Not a great showing
No,
for me.
not a great showing at all.
And I overestimated how many batters I hit. Because the 3 in a row stood out in my mind.
Yeah, well, that would skew things, definitely. If I've done that, I must have hit a whole bunch of people.
The Giants promoted me weeks later after that.
Well, maybe they thought you had the killer instinct. And you're like, no, that was just a one-off
No, I
accident.
just couldn't control the ball that particular night. Having a great season. All of a sudden just started hitting everybody. Anyway, that was fun. I'm willing to try it again.
Well, you need to now because you've embarrassed yourself and the family.
I do tell my kids don't embarrass the family.
Right.
And I just did. Pretty poor.
Mm-hmm.
All right, is that it for today?
Yeah, I believe so.
So we've got tomorrow night, so tomorrow during the day, obviously, 10:30 a.m., we're live. Week 11 preview show. And then tomorrow night, That's Good Sports. We're going to go live with them right after Commanders Eagles.
Yep.
Great Thursday night game. Little crossover episode there.
And remember, each of us is sporting some form of ridiculous facial hair because we are raising money for Men's Health via Movember. We are not doing
I had
this.
a donation come in while we've been live.
Yeah, there we go. We're not doing this just because we like looking stupid. We're doing this to raise money. So the link to our Movember pages, each of us should be in the description of the show. All donations gratefully received. For Steve, the mustache is going to keep getting more ridiculous anyway. For me, the money will determine the subsequent shape of the mustache.
Well, there we go. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again tomorrow with more. Check the mic.